Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Vijf Vragen, or 5 Questions, as we would say in English. This is our podcast featuring the people of the Netherlands' diplomatic network here in the U.S. We're talking with the diplomats and policy officers about the strong bonds between the United States and the Netherlands, as well as our diplomatic work in the U.S. We're focusing on the collaborations between our two countries that make our relationship a partnership that works. I'm Jeff Allenak from the Embassy's Communications Office, and I'm talking with Monica Schagen, covering health, welfare, and sports for both the U.S. and Canada. Thanks for joining me today, Monica.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm very happy to be here.
You're relatively new to the Embassy, so I asked you to join me today to talk about your work as the health counselor. But before we find ourselves in the heart of that healthy discussion, I'd like to start with a more basic question. What's your background, and how'd you end up at the Embassy?
I started my working life in the Royal Netherlands Navy, where I served as a communications specialist. I had several deployments that took me all over the world. So the phrase, join the Navy, see the world, is one that is definitely true. I really enjoyed the diverse environment over there and the ability to experience different cultures. And I left the Navy to study nursing. And during my nursing studies, I studied a semester abroad at the Pace University in New York, and I did an internship at the Mount Sinai Hospital. That was my first encounter with a very different healthcare system. It was very enriching, and after several other internships throughout the Dutch healthcare system, I graduated and started working as a registered nurse at the Leiden University Medical Center.
So it was a real career change for you. You weren't a nurse in the Navy.
I wasn't a nurse in the Navy, no.
So how did you make that shift? What made you want to make that shift, I guess I should ask.
Right. That's a difficult, more complex question. I'm not really sure. I think that throughout the experiences in the Navy, I learned a little bit more about myself, who I was, who I wanted to be, what I was good at, what skills I already possessed myself, and what would help me to thrive further throughout life. And I was sure that I wanted to develop myself further as a person as well as a professional. And whilst looking through catalogs of different studies, I chose nursing because I thought that was closest to the things I found important and the qualities I already had and the skills I already possessed.
How long were you in the Navy for?
6 years.
6 years. Is that a full term, considered a full term then?
Yeah, at the time you could do either 4 or 6 years. I'm not really sure what it is now. Mm-hmm. But I was 17 when I joined, and it was actually because I liked...
You joined at 17?
Yes, I was very young, but it was more to the fact that I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do after finishing, well, it's not really high school, no, it's different, but it's the equivalent. Yeah, it's an equivalent.
The equivalent of graduating high school.
Yeah, but I was 16, and I was like, what do you want to do? My parents asked me, and I have no idea because I like a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But I did like sports particularly, and so I looked into like studies that, were involving sports, and one was one with sports and an integration with the Ministry of Defense, and that's why I stuck around.
Were you a practicing nurse, like an RN that we would call here,
yes.
A registered nurse?
Yes.
So did you end up in a hospital or with the... Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, as a nurse, I ended up in the hospital. Okay. Luckily, not as a patient. So,
right, not as a patient. No, right. No. As a caregiver, right?
As a caregiver, yes. I started working at the Leiden University Medical Center, and I worked at the Department for Trauma and Vascular Surgery and Orthopedics. So I treated a various group of patients, but always surgical.
After the surgery. Or were you in surgery?
No, after. No,
so after they were out of the operating room, you tended to them?
Yes, or prior to their having an operation.
Okay. Yes. But then at some point you switched to policy? Because we don't have a hospital here in the Embassy, right? You don't treat patients here, right?
No. And I think that a lot of people would be happy that I won't treat any patients here. Well, since I am not working as a nurse like every nowadays. But... the switch to policy actually was because I saw a lot of things in our healthcare system that could be up for improvement. Mm-hmm. And I am a strong character. I have a strong character, or so they say. I cannot deny that, actually. But that made me see how I can influence the policy shaping and the way we integrate our healthcare and innovation in that. Mm-hmm. So I looked around. I found the nursing profession really valuable, but I saw opportunities for me to be an actual voice for nurses, what they experience, what challenges they encounter in general practice, and see if I could contribute to the improvement of that.
So how long were you practicing a practicing nurse?
Before
you switched to policy, yeah.
Oh, well, I actually combined the policy and the nursing part up until last year.
Oh, okay.
So whilst being a nurse, I started studying at the Erasmus University in Rotterdam, and I studied health economics policy and law. And that actually enabled me to see like how is policy shaped, and I found it particularly interesting that in policy every aspect of healthcare is taken into account. So you have the legislation side, but you also have the economic side. So I was particularly interested in the fact that in policy every other domain, legislation, economics, have to be taken into account and work with that. And that felt very natural to me. I found it very interesting, and that's what made me pursue a career in policy. But due to the workforce shortages in nursing, as well as being in a COVID pandemic, it didn't feel right to leave all at once and never do anything again, because my colleagues were really struggling at the time to cope with all the COVID patients. And I got the opportunity to combine the work as a policymaker with work as a nurse in the hospital.
What exactly does a health counselor do?
Well, as a counselor for health, welfare, and sports, I am the representative for the Ministry of Health, Welfare, and Sport abroad. In my case, for the U.S. and in Canada. We do have other health counselors in different parts of the world, such as India, China, Geneva, where the WHO is seated, the World Health Organization, as well as Brussels, where the European Parliament is seated. As a health counselor, I facilitate and coordinate engagements between the U.S. and Canadian governments and the Netherlands on all health, welfare, and sports-related topics. The Global Health Strategy, developed by the Ministries of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Health, Welfare and Sport, serves as one of the most important pillars on which we base our work on as a health counselor. And that means that I have a broad network of different stakeholders, all healthcare, sports, or welfare related. And this network is to some extent already here. It's already in place, but I just connect the dots and facilitate dialogue or discussion, but also new opportunities that arise and add those to the network. And in doing so, we work very closely with colleagues on the embassy, the consulate, but also the colleagues in The Hague.
So is it trying to find different common ground among the healthcare policies? Like I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, and I don't even know what one would be. Maybe the way a certain disease might be approached. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, that's a good example. So COVID learned us that we need countries, but not only countries. So we're not talking only about governments here, but we're talking about knowledge institute like hospitals and medical centers, CEOs of companies that develop medical devices or vaccines, that we all have to work together to make sure we can face the challenges that we're facing now in healthcare. And one of them is global health. You now see that pandemic preparedness is a very big thing. In case of a pandemic, you need to work together on different levels, not only government to government, but also knowledge to knowledge. So medical centers, knowledge institutions, medical research institutions, they all have to work together, as well as with the private sector. So with pharmaceutical companies who produce vaccines or with companies that develop medical devices, there's a need for an integrated approach to be able to tackle next pandemic, and that is one of the big challenges that we're facing, and where we need collaboration.
I can see that as being a big challenge, because even among among the different states here, they all handled the pandemic response differently. I can't imagine then adding a layer of internationalism on that. I can only imagine how difficult that could be, but also how important it is as well, because pandemics don't stay within borders anymore.
No, and that's a very important point that you're pointing out, actually, because you see that we tend to be focused on our own healthcare system, which of course is very important. And governments, in the first place, have an obligation towards their own citizens to make sure that they are in good health and do everything to provide a good healthcare system for them to use if they needed it. But you now see that healthcare threats do not only exist within the borders of your country, but abroad as well. and that in the case of a pandemic, as we now saw it in COVID, it finds its origin somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And since we all have these open borders and we all travel a lot and we go from across the oceans, you see that the spread of such a disease, an infectious disease like COVID, that it can spread like very easily, and that your country can be. Yes, it did indeed. Yeah, and then there's a need to have that integrated approach together, and you have to think together not only about your domestic challenges with regard to healthcare, but also across the borders of your own country.
Mm-hmm. Our nations have different healthcare systems. Our nations mean, let's talk about the U.S. since we're here in the U.S. and the Netherlands. What can we learn from one another?
What we can learn, what the U.S. is doing really well is they have a lot of space for innovative ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to not only have innovative ideas, but also an environment in which innovative ideas can grow and actually make their way to practice. What we see in the Netherlands is that we have all these fantastic entrepreneurs with great ideas, but they're sometimes stuck because of legislation that we have in place, or they need an innovative environment to be able to explore all those ideas. And the US is facilitating that a little bit more than the Netherlands. And the other way around, actually, in the Netherlands, what I think we do great is our healthcare system is accessible for every citizen.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone is insured. There is, it's accessible and findable for everyone who needs it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sustainable, I think. It's not as sustainable as we would like it to be. There's room for improvement there, definitely. The healthcare industry is responsible for a lot of, for almost 30% of the greenhouse emissions.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot to be done there. And in the Netherlands, we are now trying to make healthcare more sustainable, the healthcare system and the healthcare industry more sustainable with regard to those emissions. And there's a will to be won there, but that's something we have very clearly in mind, and we're focusing on that as well. Mm-hmm. Another thing that we do in the Netherlands, I think, is we do not only look at the cure part of health, but also at the preventive part of health. You have a strong focus on making sure people don't get ill and don't get a disease, non-communicable diseases and stuff like that. Where it's preventable, we should try to prevent it. And the healthcare system now is pivoting a little bit towards this preventive side of things, and that's a very, very good thing that's happening.
Is there one thing that you see as an example of that? Is it, well, we tell people to take longer walks or eat less fast food or whatever have you? Is there?
Well, we had this pilot, and it's integrated now in through the insurers, insurance companies, whereas people can get gym membership.
Oh, a gym membership. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, and then part of that, if not all, will be paid for by the insurance company to advocate a healthy lifestyle. And
then do they make sure you go to the gym?
I do. I do. But yes,
people in general, they'll pay for memberships and then they just won't go for a year and they realize, oh, it's been a long time.
Well, interestingly enough, there's now some debate on if we're going to go through with this, if this is a good thing, do people actually benefit from it, and are they doing the way it's supposed to? But what the pilot was now about was that you have an app on your phone which was connected to your insurance company, and you would then fill in like when you were working out, and then you get that's what the data there would be base your exercise schedule on.
Oh, okay.
Right. So that's a way of
making sure people
actually do it. Yes.
Your portfolio also includes sports. We know how to compete on the field, but can we collaborate off the field? We have some rather large international events coming here to the U.S. that seem promising. World Cup Soccer in 2026 and the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles.
Yeah, Collaboration is always successful when there's a mutual connection to the topic.
Mm-hmm.
Sports in the US is a big part of everyday life, as it is in the Netherlands. I think we're both very competitive countries when it comes down to sports. So I am very excited that the World Cup and the Olympic and Paralympic Games will be held and hosted in the US. And I think it's a great opportunity for a successful collaboration.
Mm-hmm. How much work goes on behind the scenes then, trying to put that together?
A lot of scenarios that have to be written down and explored and developed. And yes, that's a lot of work, but it probably is worth all the work.
Yeah. When your assignment ends here in the U.S., what would you like to look back on as a major accomplishment?
Another great question.
Are you here for 3 or 4 years?
4 or 5.
4 or 5, okay.
Yes. I think one major accomplishment would be to raise more attention and awareness on the importance of global health.
Mm-hmm.
That health not only impacts a single human being, but entire families, communities, regions, countries, that it impacts not only lives, but also cultures and economies.
Mm-hmm.
Although COVID pivoted the understanding of the impact of health, it is still seen as a separate domain. And of course, it is its own domain, which is own expertise.
COVID, you mean, is its own domain? Or?
No, health.
Health, okay,
Health.
Yeah, health, yeah.
But health in general crosses every domain. It goes over the boundaries of domains. It crosses. Health is wealth. So if people are healthy, they can work, which is good for economy. If people are living, cultures will be intact and they will be on display, and that's important as well. So if people died, then this exchange of cultures won't be happening. And so health relates to all different domains that we know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it should be seen as that. And now it's more seen as like, this is health, this is economy, this is culture. We should look at it more as a holistic, with a holistic view. But more concrete, a successful World Cup, maybe win as well, and the Olympic or Paralympic Games would be the cherry on top.
So
of this.
to win the World Cup here,
that would be great. Well, not specifically here, but win the World Cup.
Win the World Cup
would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Have a great Olympic and Paralympic Games would be great too. That would be the cherry on top of this health counselor's cake.
Mm-hmm. Will you be here in 20? You will be here in 28, right?
Yes.
Well,
I can if I want to. I am able to leave early because the 4 years will end my term before the Olympic Games. But I'm planning on, if you did all the work up front, then it would be nice to see it through.
So for the Summer Olympics, then, what would be the big sport that you would say that's what we need to win gold at in LA? Is there one sport? Of course, you would say them all, right? But
that's a difficult.
I always think of, when I think of the Netherlands, I always think of course, soccer.
Right.
But also the winter sports of ice skating,
right.
Speed skating. But this is the Summer Olympics. So.
Right. It doesn't really matter in which. But
I'm a baseball guy, so I don't know the first thing about that.
Yeah. Are you for the Nationals?
No, I'm a Maryland boy. So I'm a Baltimore.
But Ravens,
all the way.
No, Ravens
is football. Orioles,
right. Nice.
Orioles all the way. I paid attention to the Nationals. They won the World Series in 2019. So
that's not too bad.
It's not long ago at all. But then they dismantled the team, and now they're rebuilding, and it's just it's hard to watch. The Orioles are on the upswing. They're really.
That's good. I saw, by the way, the game yesterday with the only Dutchman in the league, San Diego.
Oh, yeah. Zender Bogaerts. There are several Dutch people in MLB. There's several.
I only saw 2. I only know of 2, like Bogaerts and one.
Kenley Jansen. He's a closer. Ozzie Albies for the Braves. Chadwick Tromp also with the Braves.
Really?
And the other names.
Atlanta, right?
Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, right.
Well, just one final question for you. All this talk about sports. This is going to come out of the blue, but what's your favorite sports movie of all time?
I think Moneyball.
Moneyball.
Yeah. It's a tough question because I also consider Draft Day.
With Kevin Costner. The football. Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw the movie. It's a rugby movie with about the Springbokken, the South African rugby team.
I don't know that one.
It's just starring Matt Damon and I believe Morgan Freeman, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But it's such a long time so I'm going to stick with
Moneyball.
Yeah.
Is it because it's based on a true story, or what's so fascinating about that for you?
Yes, I'm a sucker for for films based on true stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was...
So you can watch that one over and over again and not be bored of it?
Probably.
Is that right? Okay.
What's yours?
I would probably go to Field of Dreams, actually, from '89. It's a Kevin Costner movie. It's...
What's it about? I don't know.
Field of Dreams. It's not based on a true story. It's
okay, but it doesn't matter.
No. It's from 1989. It's Kevin Costner's a corn farmer in Iowa, and it's this story about a guy who hears voices and does these mysterious things that the voices tell him to do, and in the end he ends up. You think in the beginning it's if you build it, he will come, and he's talking about Shoeless Joe Jackson, who was a ball player who was on the Black Sox from 1919, I think it was 1918, early 1900s, kicked out of baseball forever for betting on games, and at the end you realize no, it was if you build it, he is referring to his father. He will come. Because his father was a baseball player as well, who never made it. So the Field of Dreams is he builds a baseball field in his backyard, plows under his cornfield, and is at risk of losing his farm,
right?
Because
he doesn't have any corn.
He doesn't have any corn,
right?
And it's a story about somebody just doing the odd thing that makes sense to nobody because you believe it's the right thing to do, and it ends up.
You follow your gut.
And you follow his gut, yeah. It's one of the. It's really good. From
Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams from '89.
I'll make sure to watch that.
Either that one, or I like Moneyball as well.
Right.
And another baseball one that comes to mind is Eight Men Out. I've
heard of that.
It's about the Chicago Black Sox, the betting scandal of the 1919, where Shoeless Joe Jackson was on.
I heard of that. I haven't seen it. It's good. Okay, I'm gonna write it.
That's a good one too. It's not well known, but
no, I heard.
I like that one too.
And there are a lot of I like the movies that are based on it. I mean, Draft Day. I don't know if it's really. That's not really based on a true story. I don't know if it is,
but the Draft, I would believe, works that way, or to some degree anyway.
Yeah, and that is something that I found fascinating because you have no idea what's going on. This year actually was my first year that I got to see that I followed Draft game on the, and I still try to remember what was going on behind the scenes and what you didn't see, all the phone calls. And I tried to recall the movie because they explained it throughout the movie a little bit, and that's very interesting.
Miracle on Ice is a good one. That's based on a true story. It's about the 1980 U.S. men's hockey team. That was the 1980 hockey team. We were underdogs against the Soviet Union, and it's the story about how these hockey team came together and actually won the gold in the 1980s. It's with Kurt against. The final match. I can't remember. The final match that won the gold wasn't against the Soviet Union. It was the game before. It was the semifinal was against the Soviet Union, but nobody remembers that. Everybody remembers it's the Soviet Union.
Exactly.
And that game that our college age kids beat these veterans who should have run circles around them and didn't. And
that's a good one.
It's a really good one.
I like that too. Yeah, I like sports in general. So you can have me where I like some sports better than others, but in general, I like to. It's because I'm not probably good at one of them, but it's nice to see. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you again, Monica, for joining me for this episode of Vijf Vragen. Though I might have asked a few more than 5 questions again. I hope that's okay. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please tell us what you think in the comments below, and be sure to click on the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode or the other videos we post on our YouTube channel. I'll be back behind the microphone next month with another member of the Dutch Diplomatic Network in the United States. Until then, you can keep up with our work on any of our social media channels, Facebook, X, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Just search for NL in the USA, and you can stay up to date on how the United States and the Netherlands have a partnership that works.